You know, I don't really understand the deal with current Iron Man comics because they seem very all over the place. So here on Comic Drake, I generally do these deep dive analysis videos into various storylines, or I make like big list videos explaining like every single Batman. Instead I want to do like a little something different, just a chill vibe where I talk about some recent comics I've been reading, because normally I would be on top of everything that's been coming out from Marvel and DC, but I have been incredibly busy making other content that requires a lot of old school research. So one of the big reasons why I really wanted to talk about all of this stuff today is because while I normally love doing my highly scripted, curated content, I find it very odd that within like 2 years, we've already had like 3 distinct eras of Iron Man. We've gone from the traditional Tony Stark tech billionaire that we all know and love with his cocky attitude to this long-haired guy leading a robot AI uprising that abandoned the Tony Stark name and is calling himself Mark I, and then he goes into full-on midlife crisis mode. Okay, that's a trip. So I finally finished reading the entire run of Tony Stark Iron Man. I want to say this came out in like 2018, 2019. It's written by Dan Slott, the guy who's been doing a bunch of Spider-Man stuff over the years, but they finally took him off and they said like, hey Dan, you want to write like anything else? So he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do Iron Man. And you know what? I like this book. It gets a bad reputation, but they very much want to lean into Tony Stark as the tech guy, which I understand is a little odd considering, well, isn't that his entire thing, is being the tech guy? Well, no. This is like way overkill. So they decided that Stark Industries needs to be bigger and crazier. It's either like Stark Unlimited or Stark International. Look, I don't know everything off the top of my head, but it's a bigger Stark, more robots, more everything. There's more Iron Man suits than ever these days. Like, oh, is Fin Fang Foom the giant alien dragon fighting? We need to have our oddly specific Fin Fang Foom Buster. We have robots just walking around the campus of Stark Industries, just being employees, being people, and they're talking about AI rights. This is the tech angle, and you know, I kind of dig it. Like, yeah, artificial intelligence in Marvel is kind of all over the place, and for some characters like the Vision, for example, they're more or less people, so maybe they should have some degree of rights and autonomy. And that's a struggle that they really dive into in Tony Stark Iron Man, and I thought it was interesting to say the least. It's also odd because Tony had died and then regrew his body and then uploaded a digital backup of his consciousness into his body. So is Tony Stark even Tony Stark, or is he just artificial intelligence? Because who's to say that his memory engram thing isn't just a program? Is he the original Tony Stark? Does that matter? Is this like the ship of Theseus, where if you keep replacing one thing at a time and eventually every part is changed, is that the original ship? Who knows? And that's interesting. They also go like Sword Art Online, .hackish, where like, hey, there's a whole VR world and you die in the game, you die in real life. And that was an interesting plot. But then Iron Man 2020 happened, which was what Tony Stark Iron Man was building to. And I don't like this book. At least I don't think I do. So for those of you guys who aren't like super down on all of your ridiculous Iron Man lore, Tony Stark is not the biological son of Howard and Maria Stark. He's adopted. There was a biological Stark son, that's Arno Stark, but he had a rare disease and he had to be inside of an iron lung for all this time and was put away off to the side to not taint the Stark name. Also, he was like genetically modified to fight some looming alien technology threat thing. It's complicated because comics. Anyway, in the series, prior to Tony Stark Iron Man and Iron Man 2020, Tony was able to help his brother out, get out of the lung, do his whole thing. The Stark brothers are at it. And so Arno in Stark Unlimited, Stark International, whatever the hell it's called, he's doing his own thing, like trying to figure out, hey, how do we make the best ethical meat consumption? Which, cool, good problem to have. But then Arno starts like going crazy and evil, and he teams up with an older Iron Man villain, Madam Menace. Sunset Bane is her name, and she's in charge of Banetronics, I think is her company. And because of like corporate shenanigans, Arno is able to basically take all of Stark and fuse it with Bane, and now they're gonna rule the world together. But also, remember how I said the whole thing of like, oh, am I actually Tony Stark or am I just an AI backup? Well, he decides to lean in just fully to his new artificial intelligence identity. And so Iron Man is no longer a person. He is now calling himself Mark 1, and he is leading the robot artificial intelligence uprising against Arno, who is the new Iron Man for a new age, Iron Man 2020, because that's the current year in the book. Also, it's a reference to an older storyline that I frankly haven't read, but I'm sure is something. So Arno is trying to unite all of artificial intelligence and robots into like one obedient force using some like special obedience code that he made. And Mark 1, Tony, and his Liberation Force are trying to stop that. And, you know, they clash and it all ensues. Turns out that like Arno's trying to band all the robots together to fight the big looming alien threat that may or may not actually be a thing. And it's all over the place. It's a weird event. And especially with COVID, they put like a pause on it for a while. And I definitely didn't know what was going on because I wasn't keeping up with it on a month-to-month basis. And when it ended, it was just kind of lackluster, in my opinion. And then Tony's like, it's okay, I can be Tony Stark. And he regrews like another body and uploads his mind into that body again, but whatever, he's a person now. And he has like this suit that's like a solid hologram. It's weird. But overall, I think Dan Slott's time on Iron Man has been good. I really like that they brought back the old pairing of Tony and Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. I thought they were a cute couple, and I really enjoyed Tony's interactions with Rhodey, with Bethany Kame, and all of the other supporting cast that you never really got to see in recent Iron Man stuff, because ever since 2008, the books have been like, well, let's just do what the MCU's doing. So a lot of like the older Iron Man lore and characters have kind of gone to the wayside. So Dan Slott coming on this book was a good way to bring it all back and maybe revamp these characters and concepts to potentially be used in the MCU later, because let's be honest, the Marvel comics are pretty much just a testing ground for the MCU. Whatever. So the reason I'm making this really weird unscripted ramble rant video is because they released a follow-up to Dan Slott's run just called Iron Man, because comics. It's written by, I believe his name is Christopher Cantwell, and I didn't know about him when I read this. I did some research. I did like a little bit, aka I just Googled his name. Turns out he wrote the recent Doctor Doom series, which I wasn't really a fan of, but I kind of like this book. It's really odd because it goes in like the exact opposite direction of what Tony Stark Iron Man was trying to accomplish, because instead of being the big tech book where everything's all techy, they decided to go like smaller scale on this, where he wants to be more iron and man for Iron Man. He wants to go low tech, so the suit that he wears in this one isn't as it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that the current ones do in the movies and in the most recent books. He deletes his Twitter, which we all should, because I go insane on my Twitter. Follow me at TrailerDrake if you want to feed my addiction. He sells his multi-million-dollar mansion, and he gets this this brick apartment in New York, and he's trying to... Honestly, it reads like Tony Stark is having a midlife crisis. He goes and buys an old car and soups it up and street races and is really bad at it. But even though Tony Stark Iron Man was like a big, mental quandary of, well, am I a person? Am I AI? They kind of do that again in this book, where it's more of like, what does it mean to be a hero? What does it mean to be Iron Man? And so this question is at the forefront of this series. Now, there's only 3 issues out right now, so I don't really know where it's going to pan out, but it's been enjoyable. Tony Stark is a character that I feel really thrives in moral conundrums, you know, his alcoholism being a famous example of that, of him battling his own inner demons and trying to come to terms with who he is. Now, unfortunately, that means that anytime that Tony makes any kind of substantial character growth, they throw all of that out the window. And God, that's so apparent with, even though I am enjoying this. So like I said, they got Janet Van Dyne and Tony together again, Wasp and Iron Man as a couple, and then like in issue 1, they break up. I mean, sure, Tony was kind of off growing long hair and leading a artificial intelligence uprising kind of puts a damper on the love life, but it just felt like for the new book, like, let's just throw away everything that Dan Slott did. Let's have Tony sell out all of his stock in his company and just completely change his entire personality on a dime, because at the end of Iron Man 2020, Tony's like, hey, it's me again, and I'm just gonna be Iron Man. And in all of the other books that he's in, like Avengers, he's the Tony Stark you'd expect, not this brooding man in this one. But to pair Mr. Broody, Marvel decided to bring back Patsy Walker, Hellcat, who is a fascinating character that I really like. And in fact, if you want to know more information about her, I have an entire video dedicated to explaining her nonsense. But to try and hyper-simplify it, Patsy Walker was a character that was made to kind of rip off and compete with Archie comics way back in the day. And actually, those books came out before the Marvel universe that we know it, which started with Fantastic Four #1. They then retconned Patsy into being in that universe, and then they decided to make her a character with superpowers and then get her married to the son of Satan and then her go insane and kill herself. Which, that aspect is not what I thought they'd be bringing back to the forefront, and they did. So Tony is going through all this self-loathing, like, oh, am I a hero? Do people like me? Every time that I try to fight crime, I have to deal with property damage, and my reputation has gone down the shithole. And I just want to go by this playground and say, hey kids, look at me, I'm a hero. And then the teachers call him out like, well, was that for the kids' benefit or was it for your own ego trip, Tony? And he's really come to terms with being just not a great person. And for some reason, Patsy Walker shows up to be like, Tony, I'm gonna be your tough love coach, and we're gonna build you up from nothing. Maybe it's comics I haven't read, but I don't remember them having any kind of like friendship or relationship prior, but it's odd. But to bring back to the whole suicide thing, is they're on this plane going to to Oklahoma to see an investment that Tony's working on for clean energy, and Tony's talking about his struggles, and Patsy mentions that she died before, and Tony goes, yeah, I have too. And she says, yeah, but not by choice. And that's been interesting. The fact that Patsy was able to kill herself, realize her mistake, and come back from it gives her a very unique perspective, and she kind of tells Tony to just like stop with the pity party. And I think that's some powerful stuff. It's way better written than I could ever explain it, because listening to some guy on the internet summarize comic books to you is no substitute for actually reading it yourself. Trust me, you're doing yourself a disservice by not actually reading comics. However, as powerful as that writing is, and as much as I like it, that's not what anybody's going to take away from it, it seems like, because Patsy is also a character written in this current Iron Man book to be like, hey, Tony, have you ever looked past your own privilege? And that's just because the concept of privilege was introduced. You know, a bunch of very specific content creators are just gonna latch onto that and talk about, oh, the SJWs are ruining everything. And I bet by mentioning this, I've already lost a decent amount of viewers and are just gonna go crazy in my comments. Whatever, they won't be missed. But I think it's interesting. It's a weird character to bring in for this. It doesn't have anything to do with the Iron Man lore. I feel like just Cantwell is doing whatever he wants with this book. Only 3 issues? I kind of dig it, but it feels like Marvel doesn't know what they want. Do they want Tony Stark, hyper tech man, Mr. Technology? Or do they want like grungy, sort of like, not steampunk, but just like a low tech man in a suit? What do they want? I don't know. Maybe this book will we'll explore it more, but otherwise, yeah, like it a lot. The writing's pretty good. The art's really good. The cover is by Alex Ross, incredible. So yeah, I don't know what the purpose of this video was. I just wanted to talk about some shit I've been reading recently on my laundry chair. So I'm gonna edit this and put it out. If you like it, let me know, because maybe I'll do more of these where I get my pajamas and coffee and just like ramble about shit. Okay, so long, like and subscribe. Cheers.